Hello, everybody. It is that time of the week. It's Wednesday, which means it's time for a realignment clip on the Breaking Points channel. Marshall, of course, co-hosted with me over the last couple of days. And we have an awesome guest for everybody that I know this audience is going to like. Who is it, Marshall?
Yeah, it's Ben Mezrich. He has written the Antisocial Network, the GameStop Short Squeeze, and the Ragtag group of amateur traders that brought Wall Street to its knees. I just want to say I had an amazing time hanging out with everyone the past two shows. It's good to be back in my more comfortable single camera Zoom format. But if you enjoyed watching Saagar and I banter about and have a good time, this is definitely going to be of your liking. Quick reminder, our show goes up on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and you will always find a Breaking Points clip on this channel on Wednesdays. Let's get into the episode. I just want to ask you the narrative question here, because here's where my skepticism comes in. Saagar and I, we do like 120 of these a year. So we see a lot of people who have a lot of very convenient, very straightforward narratives about what's happening. If it's 2017, the neoliberal world order has collapsed. That's why X, Y, and Z things that I'm saying are true. If it's 2018, insert some other narrative here. So how do you know this is actually happening? And by that, I mean, I'm talking about the Wall Street post-2008 financial crisis sense of this, because I remember we were talking to someone on a podcast and someone said, you know, this is being driven by people who woke up in 2008 and a bank had come and taken away their house and they're just fed up. I'm like, I know that narrative, and that's a great narrative that makes you want to buy a book.
Right.
But is that actually happening? Because it feels to me like most of the people I was talking about this with were A, doing this to make money off of speculation, or B, doing it for the lulz. Because we were talking, this is actually pretty funny. Like, this entire story is pretty funny.
And I agree with you 100%, the lulz part. So that ties into this, okay? Our ability to now say, screw it, I don't care, I'm going to do this, I'm going to just throw my money into this because it's a joke. That ties into the collapse, if you want to put it, of all of our confidence in the stock market, of our belief that the system is fair. We all now think the system is rigged. We all think that the system is crap. And that goes back to 2008. That goes back to people losing their jobs while Wall Street, nobody went to jail, right? That ability to detach yourself and say, it's all a game anyways, that ties in to this. I mean, because in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s, you didn't think that way about your money. And you didn't think that way about the stock market, but you do now, and it's very easy to do that. So the way I see it, and the reason I think it pulls back to this anger from 2008 all the way back to Occupy Wall Street is the anger towards Wall Street, is because I just talked to everybody, you know. So to write this story, I interviewed, you know, everyone from every side of it, and as many people as I could who were involved, but also regular people on Reddit and all of the boards. And the WallStreetBets board on the whole absolutely has this attitude of this is a big joke. We're going to put up pictures of our losses and relish and love our losses as much as we love our wins. I think that's one of the brilliance of the site and why it creates such a community. But someone who throws all his money into some crappy stock and loses it all gets tons back from the community. Even more so than the guy who makes millions of dollars.
Yeah, way more.
So I think that all goes back into the fact that the foundation isn't there anymore. You know, my parents who are older, when I'm writing this book, are like, should we be worried? Is the stock market a joke? Our money is all in these blue chip. And I'm like, yeah, absolutely, you should be worried, because the stock market is a joke now. And I think there's this general feeling among young people, especially, that this is a game. And that, you know, I'm going to try and make some money off of this, but I don't really care. I don't really care that GameStop doesn't have the fundamentals, maybe, although that might be changing now. I don't care what Dogecoin is. I don't care that this is a made up coin, right? That has a nearly infinite supply, that has no use. I'm still going to make money on it, right? That thinking goes back, you know, to 2008, but it also goes back to video games and the idea that the virtual real world is just as real as the real world, and that there doesn't need to be a fundamental reality behind anything anymore. And, you know, we can look for the cracks in the structures that led us to the point where we believe that. But we really are living in a simulation now. Even if there isn't really a simulation, we've all bought into the simulation theory. to some extent. And I think the cracks that happened in 2008 led to us being able to do that. So yeah, I'm not saying that people were walking around with pitchforks and angry and I want to burn Melvin Capital to the ground. But yes, what was the thing that exploded all over Reddit? That Chernobyl image of them burning to the ground, right? That's the imagery that this was built on. Everyone's posts were like, I'm going to destroy this guy. I want them to die. You know, that is anger, even if you're not actually angry. And I think that also ties into the pandemic. Like, we're all so mad about this. We're not walking around saying, I hate you, coronavirus, but we are saying, I hate you, Fauci, right? There's so much anger, right, towards this, and we don't know where to aim it. And people are aiming it in all the wrong directions. I mean, people are going anti-science or people are going anti-this, when the reality is you're mad at a virus, okay? And I think this ties into GameStop, where we're mad at Wall Street because people lost jobs, people aren't making money, we're all stuck at home. The economy has gone to crap, but not for Wall Street. Wall Street's doing great. And you see, these guys in their suits and ties making fortunes and buying $35 million mansions in Miami while people are losing their jobs at Starbucks, right? And so I do think that drives this more than maybe people are willing to admit. I think you can say this is a big joke and I'm going to make some money on GameStop, but you're scared and you're nervous because your life is turned upside down. And you're pissed off when you see someone not having their life turned upside down, but literally making money on your failure, right? I work at GameStop and I'm going to lose my job because these people are shorting this company out of existence. That has to hurt, right? That has to, and all of us like going to GameStop, even though it's a stupid store. And someone wants to take that away from me. They've taken everything else away from me, and now they're going to take GameStop away. I just feel that drives this more than you would realize. And as I interviewed people and got into it, at first, it's a joke, it's funny. But when you start to talk to them, it's less and less funny. It's more and more, this is not fair. The system is not fair. And one of the characters is a big Trump supporter. One of the characters in my book is this woman, single mother of two. She's an RN, so she's actually on the front lines of the pandemic in a lot of ways. And she voted for Trump. She loves Trump. And her reasoning, and she's, by the way, a lovely woman. And when you get to know her, you actually genuinely like her. But her reasoning, it comes out of this, I have been screwed my whole life. Wall Street has screwed me. My divorces, everything has not worked out. I can barely pay for my kids' braces. And what has any president ever done for me? Nothing, right? I could vote for the right person who says all the right things, and my life doesn't change one bit. And so there's this feeling, this wanting to tear it all down, right? To do something different. And I think that drives that more than you would realize. And so, people make bad decisions for good reasons, I think. And I think that plays into this whole GameStop thing. The whole idea that, I'm going to do something crazy and stupid, and maybe I'll win for once. And I think that drove a lot of it too.
Interesting.
You just said something very helpful that answered a question I had and I want to bring out explicitly, which is, how is this time different? So if you read any, and once again, we were like 8. So when I say read, I did not experience this personally, but during the .com bubble, during the 1990s, there's all these stories about there's some kid in his basement and he's buying stocks and he's not going to E-Trade or Ameritrade or any of these different platforms. What makes this post 2008, especially in 2020, what is different between these two eras? And what I want to highlight and what you really made there is, it seems like that was much more optimistic than what you're describing here when you talk about cracks. So I'd just love to hear your response to that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a definite stream of nihilism going through this crowd right here, and this moment in our time, in our history. I mean, first of all, social media has changed everything. And the stock market was one of the last places where they thought, or Wall Street thought, this is not going to affect us to this degree. Social media took on the music business, it changed writing, it changed politics, right? And it hadn't really changed Wall Street all that much yet. But now it is changing Wall Street. The whole idea of the meme stop, the whole idea that there can be a community on Reddit that has more financial power than the largest Wall Street bank. Because 10 million people with a $2,000 stimulus check is a bigger fund than the largest fund on Wall Street. And that's what starts to tear into this, is that the idea that without meaning to organize, this became organized. So the difference is during the dot-com boom and all of those moments, you definitely had these people in their basement doing this, buying a stock, making money, but you didn't have 9 million people able to do this together. And that changes everything. And that's one big difference. And the other thing I think is you have the pandemic, is you have everyone stuck at home. So the same way we all watch Netflix until they've run out of shows, everybody was trading stocks and day trading, something that used to be something that a very few people did. Suddenly everyone, I mean, high school kids were, talking to their moms about buying some GameStop. I mean, everybody was involved in this story and able, because of Robinhood, to do it. Robinhood is another part of it, the whole gamification moment. Back then, during the dot-com boom or 2008 or any of that time periods, it was actually kind of hard to buy and sell stocks. You had to have some level of savvy. You had to have some level of knowledge. You had to have a certain amount of money. You had to take more risk because you had to pay fees and things like that. I remember what opening an account was like 10 years ago. Opening a trading account was the biggest pain in the ass.
Yeah, it's a pain in the ass. Right.
And it was hard. And you had to have, if you were young, you had to have like some other people's money backing your money because you couldn't put enough money in to do it, right? So you basically were on your parents' accounts and things like that. Today, college kids can open a Robinhood account, right? Today, right now, with a couple $1,000s in the bank. So it's become what sports betting was in a way, but legal. Sports betting, people were figuring out how to do it, even though it wasn't entirely legal, or you had to do it with offshore accounts. Now, with an American bank account, you can open an account on Robinhood instantly and buy and sell stocks. So this is a very new moment that I don't think Wall Street has totally taken into account yet, or totally figured out how to deal with it going forward. But this is really just the beginning of this. The idea that, a place like Reddit or Facebook or Twitter can move markets is something that we're really just starting to understand. I think crypto shows that as well. I think crypto is moved entirely by social markets and social media.
I think you're completely right.
And there's obviously no fundamentals behind something like Dogecoin. Bitcoin may be a little bit more fundamentals, but the reality is the whole idea of something fundamental doesn't really exist anymore. It's much the social aspect of the stock market is going to overwhelm and become more important than everything else. And how companies are going to deal with that going forward, and how the SEC is going to deal with that, how that's all going to come, all these decisions are going to have to be made.
I want to stick a pin.
It affects everything, I think. Short selling is a perfect example. Short selling is going to become more and more dangerous and more difficult, even though you can make very good arguments for it, right? There's a place for revealing when a company is doing poorly, or revealing that a company is fake or shouldn't exist. I mean, the Theranos trial is going on right now. There are moments when someone needs to pull the plug on something and say, look at this. This is ridiculous. But shorting a company during a pandemic can be looked at very negatively because there are ethical and moral quandaries to this that I think are not fully explored by people on Wall Street, but are definitely fully explored on social media.